So they delisted XRP, but they wrote a letter of support.
Well, they liked the money that it brought them.
I think they're like trying to lawsuit.
They're probably holding more XRP than their customers.
I think the amicus briefs are, I mean, if anybody doesn't know how they work, they're just sort of probably joining in general, trying to sort of fight the SEC across more foundational law than, giving a shit about,
for all their other coins.
Yeah, there's a bigger fight here than just, and this is the fight, right? Like whether or not the SEC beats Ripple will basically determine whether or not what the SEC can do against everything. It's like very, very foundational. This law is going to set the law of the land, basically. I think people don't understand just how important it is, to be honest.
Martin, do you have any insight on how much support the Ripple lawsuit gets from Consensus and Joe and crew?
No, I don't. Although
Bitcoin.
I guess I know who you're talking about, what you're talking about, but I think like there is a law of diminishing returns with attorneys. I think that there's only so much legal advice you can get. At some point, it's a judge and a court thing, and this one's really tricky. I don't know how it's gonna play out. You would think a settlement. I mean, the SEC's probably they never lose, but if they lose here, it opens up the floodgates for case law that just says you can do what you want in crypto, basically.
Right. Yeah. I'm just curious how you might see the SEC differentiating between XRP and Ethereum, if at all.
If there's a loss, I mean, I think people will. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know enough to say, but I would think anytime the SEC loses, it's very rare. They lost this case, SEC v. Liu, at the Supreme Court, which is really, really big, where they basically, this new Supreme Court, who I happen to love, maybe outside of Roe v. Wade, which I'll just say for political convenience, but they've done a really great job of dismantling a lot of the government's BS. And SEC v. Liu and AMG, which is the FTC case, AMG v. FTC, both went against the government and completely wrecked like two major institutions of government, where now the FTC can't use equitable monetary relief and the SEC at all, and the SEC can't use it as a disgorgement tool. They basically said disgorgement isn't a legal concept. You have to, you can only claw back what was lost, not just whatever you want. And it was a really big win for anybody who likes freedom, and a really big loss for the FTC. So if they lose Ripple, it's like, I don't know exactly what standard that sets. Like, does that make every shitcoin legal? Does that make, I don't know exactly, what precedent it sets, but it could make ICOs de facto legal, which would be a pretty big one. I don't know if we see. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was changing subject, so I'll let you finish.
No, I wish I knew more. I just know how big the case is and how important it is in DC. Like, if the FTC beats Ripple, they're gonna use that case law that they established and go after Ethereum, or go after even, who knows? They could do whatever they want. Having a win in the pocket, they'll be sort of galvanized to, I think, continue litigation. But this is the big test case, right? And once they have this precedent, all they have to do is prove that you looked even remotely like Ripple and you're toast. Or vice versa, right? If they lose the precedent, all you have to do is you looked remotely like Ripple, and now you're in the clear. So this thing has got pretty huge impact on crypto. I don't know what the timelines are for a decision or anything, but I think they are drawing to a close. Of course, there'll be an appeal and everything as well.
Did you even listen to the arguments this morning on the UNC case? Speaking of a Supreme Court that is turned.
I was just about to bring that up too. Did you joke that?
I listened to the whole thing. Ketanji Jackson Brown is so stupid.
She can't be that stupid.
Oh, she's so stupid, Martin. She was misusing legal terms on the bench, and then there was this moment where she decided she was going to explain how affirmative action works to all of the other justices, and it was patronizing. It was amazing.
That sounds pretty cringy, but yeah, she can't be that stupid. Come on.
She's that stupid.
She's a Supreme Court justice. It's not easy.
She's dumber than Sotomayor.
Okay, that's bad.
It was very embarrassing. It was funny. I mean, I think it's funny because the left on the Supreme Court now really speaks a lot, and the right doesn't say much, and it makes it sound like all the arguments are in favor of like the side that they're not actually in favor of. I think they're going to end affirmative action.
It sounds like that's what's going to happen, and I think that it's amazing. Clarence Thomas is like holding the entire world up against his arm, like a stiff arm of a football player or something like that. If you can imagine that, like this is the one man that like is standing against millions of people. In some cases,
Alito too, though. You got to give it to Alito.
Sure, but you know Clarence's SEC versus Lou case, where so basically Lou is a scam artist, and Lou raised $40 million, let's say, from investors to start a cancer center. He stole 3 or 4 million of it, right? But he actually spent a lot of it on the cancer center. The SEC says, you got to pay 40. He says, what are you talking about? I have to pay 3, the 3 that I stole. They said, no, you got to pay all 40. And he lost at the district court. He lost at the appeals court, and the Supreme Court said, you guys are just making this up. You don't have the right to ask him for 40. You can ask him for the 3. That's the right Congress gave you, and that's it. And this has been like law for 100 years. And then for the FTC, it's even funnier. They said the FTC has no ability to get any money from anyone at any time, which is really hilarious because Facebook paid the FTC $5 billion to end a litigation. The FTC has no power other than to say, you're a monopolist, please stop. And that's it. They can force you to stop, but that's really the only power they have. They don't have any power to say, give us $1 billion, or you've wronged consumers by $2 billion. They just made up this power on their own. And people just went with it.
I have always been amazed at their ability to just fine out of nowhere these companies with no redress or court order or anything. They just find it, and they decide to fine them, like the banks. I mean, like Wells Fargo, look at what they had to pay.
Oh, that's even better. This new agency, the CFPB, completely unconstitutional. And this is where I was going with this, which is there's this crazy law, precedent, called, let's see, Humphrey's Executor. And Humphrey's Executor basically allowed the creation of the
Humphrey's
FTC.
Executor is the name of my wiener. Martin, just so you know.
Humphrey's Executor was found that the FTC was constitutional. And Clarence Thomas, in his dissent on the SEC v. Lou, he said, not only do I think we didn't go far enough in the SEC, he was sort of hinting that he felt the SEC and the FTC were unconstitutional. And if you think about his logic, it makes a lot of sense. He's basically saying that these entities are extrajudicial, they're extra-governmental. They're not in one of the 3 branches of government. They certainly aren't courts. They certainly are not a part of Congress. They're supposed to be a part of the executive branch, but here's the rub. The president cannot fire people on the FTC. You get a 7-year term. So there's kind of, I hate to use the word deep state, but like they're people that basically can't be told what to do. If the head of the FTC fucks up royally, Lena Khan is her name at the moment, they can't say, oh, Lena, you have to step down from the FTC. She says, I get 7 years. You can't tell me what to do, Mr. Biden, President Biden. And that's that. And so what branch of government is that? is that that's not the executive branch. You serve at the pleasure of the president. That's not Congress. You get reelected every year. She never got elected by anybody. And certainly not the courts. So it's this fourth branch of government, and it's kind of bullshit. And so he's basically saying if he gets a chance, he's going to actually make the FTC illegal, and possibly even that SEC. Of course, the SEC was appointed by Congress, but even when Congress does things, that doesn't make them legal. They still have to be constitutional. So
Getting the SEC would be amazing.
yeah, I think the SEC does a lot of good things, but I certainly am no fan of them at the moment. But it'd be weird without the FTC, right? Where would we file publicly traded companies file their financial documents, all kind of stuff like that? Things would be fucking nuts.
Well, wouldn't they just change the structure? They'd call it the FTC and then make it actually part of the executive.
Right. I mean, all they have to do is basically let the commissioners be fired by government, which would be fine, right? I mean, and right now the SEC, I believe the SEC commissioner can be fired by the president. It never tends to happen, but I do believe that the SEC has its own. Is less legally questionable than the FTC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I love Clarence.
Yeah, he's like the most powerful black man in our country's history, arguably, and he's a Republican. He's really unafraid of his opinion. I don't even agree with all of his opinions, but man, what a badass! Like he's definitely. He takes no prisoners, You got to respect him.
And his fucking wife is so attractive, she's so hot.
Who's his wife? Are you joking?
Genie.
How old is Clarence? Like, he's got to be like 70. Is his wife younger than him?
No.
You're just crazy.
She's very politically involved and was had a heavy hand in Jan 6.
Everybody said that.
Well, to stop the steel movement. This one happens to be true.